Okay, welcome back to all of you guys. Welcome back from lunch. We're going to move into this next topic of helping you to learn about breathing mindfulness meditation, and then we're going to do a meditation at the end. So I'm going to help you guys to understand all the ins and outs of meditation, because now that you've been exposed to the Eightfold Path, you can kind of see where it fits in. But now we're going to really expand that for you so that you can understand much more about this meditation and how it's going to help you to implement all those factors on the Eightfold Path. But first, just to get started, I'm going to share some meditation basics with you, because different people think about meditation in different ways. And whether you think about meditation in this way or not, at least you'll understand what I'm talking about when I'm describing meditation. I give you a definition here to help you understand how I think about meditation. Meditation is a technique to actively train the mind during dedicated, independent, purposeful training sessions to eliminate unwholesome qualities of the mind and or cultivate wholesome qualities of the mind in the positions of seated, lying, standing, or walking. Okay, so this is how I describe meditation, because there's certain unwholesome qualities that you're eliminating and certain wholesome qualities that you're cultivating. It's like taking the mind to the gym and exercising the mind. And then those qualities that you're cultivating, you can use them in your day-to-day life. Sometimes nowadays people use the word meditation in ways that doesn't really represent what's described here. Someone might say like, oh, I'm going to go for a drive and meditate, or I'm going to go walk the dog and meditate, or I'm going to go do some gardening and meditate. Your mind actually can't do that. You can't do two things at one time. It's only possible for the mind to do one thing. But if someone thought about meditation as driving or exercising or gardening or walking the dog, that means when I share with you that I recommend 2 or 3 sessions per day for 30 minutes, if you just went and walked the dog 2 or 3 times a day for 30 minutes, you're not going to be getting to enlightenment. That's not the way it works. You're going to need to do this dedicated, active, purposeful training session where you're eliminating certain unwholesome qualities and cultivating certain wholesome qualities. So you're going to see more about what that means as we go forward. But whenever I say the word meditation, this is what I'm referring to. It's important to have a meditation teacher. Whether you consider that person to be me or somebody else, that's a choice for you to make, but you're going to need somebody to receive guidance. Only one person would be able to get to enlightenment without a teacher. That would be a Buddha, and they're very rare in the world. So you're going to need guidance from a teacher. So I suggest you find someone that you can trust and that you can reach out to that person and ask questions from time to time. Not that you need to necessarily stay in contact with that person every single day or every week or every month or anything like that, but just being able to reach out to somebody who understands you and who has somewhat of a relationship with you, it's really helpful. Because if you didn't understand that and you were experiencing various things in your meditation and you didn't have someone to reach out to, it can be very isolating, right? Because you can't ask a book questions, right? You can read a book about meditation, but you can't ask that book any questions. And you're going to have questions along the way because you're going to be experiencing different things as you're awakening to enlightenment, and you're not going to be sure whether this thing is normal or not. And when you ask a teacher a question, if what you get back is, yeah, that's normal, keep going, that can be some reassurance for you to know that you're on the right path. But if you don't have that, it can be very isolating for you. I'm going to share a story with you guys so you guys understand how important it is to have a meditation teacher. And I suspect that what I share with you will never happen to you because you understand how important it is to have a teacher. But this one particular individual didn't understand that. And there's been others in the world too. There's this person several years ago that contacted me who had been trying to get to enlightenment on their own for about 2 years, and they were having all kinds of difficulties. This person was a doctor. They were a practicing physician in their own country, and they got to a point where they were having obsessive thoughts, where they just kept having repetitive thoughts over and over and over again. And they were having suicidal thoughts also. They were sleeping 23 hours a day. They couldn't actually go to work any longer. They were very depressed and sad, and their relationship with their fiance was falling apart. Now, again, I don't think any of this is going to happen to you because you understand you need help. But this person was watching YouTube videos, reading books, doing things like this, because nowadays we're like in a self-service environment where if you'd like to cook a cake or bake a cake, you could just get on YouTube and find out how to do that, right? Or if you were interested in learning how to do photography, you could get online and kind of figure out how to do that. But training your mind to get to enlightenment isn't that way. It's not a self-service thing. But this person didn't understand that. So they were trying with all these different videos from all these different people, all these different books, and they were trying all these different things. And they got to the point where their mind was essentially imploding on itself. Well, after about 2 years of this individual somehow figured out that they needed help, and they found me. They reached out to me. They explained to me the problem, and I was trying to help them online for several months. And their case was so significant. I said, I can't really help you online anymore. If you need help, you're going to need to come here to Thailand. So this individual ended up coming to Thailand, and they were here for a certain period of time and getting some help. And then they went back to their country. And then eventually they worked themselves out of this, right? They were able to get the help that they need to be able to move beyond these things. This person's now back to work. They don't have suicidal thoughts anymore. They don't have obsessive thoughts. They're not sleeping 23 hours a day anymore. But for about 4 to 6 years, this person's life was quite miserable. Their relationship did fall apart with their fiance. They never got married to that person. But when I talked to them, they said they're actually pleased that that's the case because they weren't really interested in getting married anyway. But nonetheless, this is just a story to illustrate to you how important it is to have a teacher. This isn't like baking a cake. This isn't like learning photography or something like that. This is something you're going to need help with. And even those types of things, if you had a teacher, you would do that much better, right? So don't think that you can just go out there randomly on your own. You're going to need help from somebody. And whoever you think is best to help you, you should reach out to that person. And as I mentioned, if it's me, great. If it's not somebody else, find somebody else to help you. You don't need to keep in touch with me at any particular time or frequency. If I hear from you 5, 10, 20, 30 years from now, you can be like, hey, David, I need your help. All right, great. I'm right here to help you, right? So feel free to reach out anytime you need help, because there's going to be certain things along the way that you're encountering that you're going to need guidance for. So just let me know if you need help. There's 4 positions that the Buddha taught to meditate in: seated, lying, standing, and walking. And you're going to learn about all of these here. I'm going to introduce you to them. Tomorrow afternoon, I'm going to teach you walking position as part of our class, and we're going to actually do it together. But here, I'm just going to introduce you to the 4 positions and explain them to you and how you would use them. But remember, you're not interested in believing me. I'm going to share with you how I use these positions, and you take that as mental understanding and intellectual knowledge, but then you're going to need to implement these at different times in order to be able to use them when you need them. It's kind of like building a tool belt, because your body's not going to be able to be in the same position all the time. You're going to need these different positions at different times. Like, for example, one time I got in a motorbike accident and all I could do is lay in bed. I had an IV hooked up to me, right? I couldn't sit or stand or walk. So luckily, fortunately, I knew the lying position. I was able to do lying meditation while I was laying in bed. So you're going to need these different positions at different times. And if you know what they are, you can just employ them whenever you need them. So the seated position is one that people tend to use a lot. It's kind of like your go-to position. It's like the primary position that a lot of people learn in, where you can sit on the floor, you can sit in a chair, maybe a bench or a sofa or a wheelchair. You can sit however you like. And normally if you're on the floor, you have some cushions under your rear, and you just bring your legs together in the cross-leg position very lightly, but you can really sit however you like. There's not just one way to do it. Some people like to put their legs off the mat because you like to keep the circulation flowing in the lower body, whereas if they're real tight, it can impede the circulation and cause pain in the lower body. The Buddha put his right hand over his left with his thumbs together, and he put this into his lap. But there's other options here too. It's not about everyone doing it the same way. It's not about training the body. It's about training the mind. So some people put their palms on their thighs or their knees, or they'll put their palms up, or they'll rest their hands comfortably in their lap. So you can put them wherever you like. For someone who's in a chair, they like to sometimes put their feet flat on the floor or lightly cross at the ankles. But here, when I sit in this chair, you can see that I'm cross-legged, so you could sit that way too. And then the same thing with the hands and arms. You can just put them wherever you like. You like the upper body to be erect with the sternum up and the shoulders back, because it keeps the mind attentive and alert during the meditation. Because remember, it's a dedicated, active, purposeful training session. So you'd like the mind to be attentive and alert during the meditation. Whereas if you were slouched, the mind would have a tendency to be dull or lethargic. But if you're real rigid, the mind could be overactive or uptight. So by having the sternum up and the shoulders back, not only will it keep the mind attentive and alert, but it'll help you to breathe in through the nose and out through the nose as well, because that's what you're going to need to do to be able to meditate. So this seated position is like a primary form of meditation that you can do any of the meditations in this position. Any of the 4 that you're going to see that the Buddha teaches, you can do it in the seated position. But sometimes in the seated position, you start noticing pain, especially as you get older. You might notice pain in your hips or your knees or your back or something like this. And that's where the lying position comes in. You can lie flat on the floor, face up, with your arms out to the side. If you've ever done yoga, they call this resting pose or corpse pose or shavasana pose. This is where you just completely have all the muscles in the body relaxed. This is really nice if you're noticing any aches and pains. You don't need to just get in a position and hold that position. If you're noticing pain for any reason, it would be unwise to breathe through that and just let that pain be there, because that's the way that your body's communicating with the mind and saying, hey, there's something wrong here. Can you fix this? So that's where you can switch right in the middle of your meditation if you need to a lying position. But now in the lying position, and even sometimes in the seated position, you might notice that you have a tendency to fall asleep, especially after lunch, right? You might fall asleep. So that's where the standing position comes in. It can kind of help to invigorate the mind a bit, as well as the walking position. That will help to kind of invigorate the mind. But I've also used the standing position in other situations too, where you just stand with your feet at shoulder width and you clasp your hand in front of you at the wrist, or you put your arms along the side, or you can clasp in the back. I've used this like at a bus stop. I was waiting for a bus and maybe I knew the bus wasn't coming for 10, 15 minutes. I would just sit there and do a little bit of meditation, or stand there and do some meditation, right? There wasn't anywhere to sit, so I would just stand. Or sometimes I was like in a line. I was at a government office and this line only moved like every 10 or 15 minutes. And I would just stand there and do a little bit of meditation. It wasn't my 2 or 3 per day for 30 minutes. It was just like a little touch-up meditation, right? Just to kind of help the mind a little bit in that situation. So you can use the standing position for that as well. And then the walking position is also helpful if you're noticing that your mind is falling asleep during seated or lying. It's helpful for that, but it's also helpful if you're noticing you have a lot of energy in your mind, like the last thing you're thinking about is going somewhere and being still, like sitting down and being still is like the last thing on your mind, because sometimes you might be hyped up a little bit because the mind is like that when you're in the unenlightened state. So the walking position is not only good to keep the mind invigorated, and even if you have pain in the body, the walking position can sometimes be helpful, but it's helpful if you're noticing you have a lot of energy or overactivity in the mind. So you can do the walking position before one of the other positions. Or there were times where I would sit down to meditate and I'd be like 3 minutes into the meditation. I was like, I can't do this. I need to get up. I need to move. So I would just do walking instead. So that's how you can do that. In the breathing mindfulness meditation, you can do this in all 4 positions. The loving kindness meditation, you usually do that in the seated, lying, or standing. You don't do that one in the walking position. So what you're doing with the mind is exactly the same, essentially, for all these positions. It's just that you're changing the body because you like the body to be comfortable, not luxurious and not painful, because that's on either side. You'd like to be in the middle where it's comfortable, because you need to go through this body in order to get to the mind. That's this next one. The mind is the boss. The body is the employee. And just like if you're trying to get to the boss, you got to go through the employee. You've got to do the same thing here. Whereas if the employees are luxurious and just sitting around, they're going to be pretty lackadaisical. They're not going to be interested to take you to see the boss. But also if the employees are painful, they're not going to take you to go see the boss. You need the employees to be comfortable to take you to go see the boss. So it's the same thing. You like the body to be comfortable so that it can take you to go see the boss and you can actually train the mind. Then the Buddha, when he teaches meditation, he says, set up mindfulness in front of you, right? This is one of his teachings. If you look at his instructions on meditation, he says, before you start meditating, set up mindfulness in front of you. So now you know a little bit more about what mindfulness is. It's awareness of mind. So before your meditation, you'd like to have some awareness of the mind. You're not interested in just plopping down into meditation because you're not going to get the same benefit there. So that's why I use chanting. It helps bring awareness to the mind before you meditate, and awareness to the breath as well. If you're not going to do chanting, it's important that you do something else. Just kind of gather up your thoughts or take off your shoes, use the bathroom. Some people might do a little bit of stretching or something like this, but you like to do something just to kind of bring some awareness to the mind that you're not just plopping down in the meditation. Because otherwise it'll be 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes before you're actually experiencing any benefit. You would like to be able to bring some awareness of mind and awareness of breath. So right away at the beginning of your meditation, you're already getting benefits. Okay. Then in terms of your time, frequency, and schedule of meditation, let me just ask you guys a question. Is it possible for you to meditate at exactly the same time every day? You say yeah. You say no. You hear that? Because of impermanence, it's not possible for you to meditate at exactly the same time. So if you set up in your calendar, I'm going to meditate every day at 8 a.m. and now you miss it, you don't, because you will miss it. You won't meditate every day at 8 a.m. Now you feel guilty and shameful, or you'll feel frustrated and angry. There were times where I was meditating and I thought I was at home alone and I was meditating, and my son walks in and says, "Dad, I need you to take me to school." I said, "Huh? I thought your mom was going to take you to school." He said, "Yeah, me too, but she left. She's not even here." And I was like, "Oh, okay. Well, I guess I'm taking you to school then." Right? So even if you're attached to meditation, even if you're craving meditation to be permanent, you'll be frustrated. You'll be agitated or annoyed, right? So I needed to get up, go take my son to school. And then when I came home, I just did my meditation. But it wasn't at the same set time every day. Because of impermanence, you can't meditate at the same time. So what you'd like to do is do what the Buddha did. The Buddha had anchor points. The Buddha didn't meditate at exactly the same time every day. You know how I know that? Because watches didn't even exist 2,500 years ago. They had no ability to keep track of precise time. So you're not going to be able to meditate at exactly the same time every day because of impermanence, and the Buddha didn't either. Right? So if you ever hear somebody say, "Oh, you have to meditate at 3:30 a.m. every day, or else you're not going to get to enlightenment," you know right away that's not true, because you can't do something every single day. It's not possible, right? You don't even brush your teeth every single day. Every once in a while, there's a day where you don't brush your teeth, right? So there's nothing special going on at 3:30 a.m. that's going to make your meditation any better or any worse, right? And you know that the Buddha didn't meditate at 3:30 a.m. every day. So you know he got to enlightenment, so why can't you, right? So the Buddha had 3 times a day that he meditated. It's very clear in his teachings. He meditated morning, midday, and evening. So these are like anchor points, right? So if I was you, I would set up in your mind that morning and evening you're going to meditate. Those are usually ideal for people, like anchor points. Somewhere in the morning when you wake up, somewhere in the evening you're going to meditate, right? And then if you can get a middle of the day meditation in, great. You won't get to enlightenment by just one meditation a day. You're going to need at least 2. Right? But maybe you start with 1, perhaps, and then you build up from there. You know, your practice is going to develop. It's going to take you 6 months, 12 months, even 24 months to build up to a regular frequency. Because what you'd like is 2 or 3 sessions per day for 30 minutes. That's ideal. And if you're going to meditate in the evening, you would like to be sure your mind's attentive and alert during the meditation. Whereas if you normally go to sleep at 10 p.m., you'd like to be meditating around 9 or 9:15, right? Because if you wait until 9:55, your mind's going to be sleepy as you're doing meditation. You need it to be attentive and alert. But just because I'm recommending that you meditate, say, 45 minutes to an hour before bed, that doesn't mean you couldn't meditate at 6 or 7 p.m. You could, right? You can meditate whenever you like, just somewhere in the morning and somewhere in the evening, and then in the middle of the day if you can. And that's going to help you to build up your practice. When I first started meditating, I could only meditate for like a minute. My mind was so congested. It was like hitting a brick wall. I couldn't meditate for longer than 1 minute. And I did that for a long time until I slowly built it up from there. So you're going to need to take your time and build this up. I don't recommend that you set an alarm. If you set an alarm for your meditation, there's one of 2 things that are going to happen. You're either going to be in meditation with the alarm set and you're going to be going, "Is it time yet? Is it time yet? Is it time yet? Is it time yet?" The mind's craving here, right? Trying to know, is it time yet, right? Or you're going to be deep in meditation, getting all kinds of benefit. Oh, man, if if I just didn't set the alarm, you could have got so much more benefit. So if you don't need an alarm, like maybe in the weekends or in the evenings, it's best to not set one. Just meditate. And then whenever you're done, right? So the way that you keep track of your time is you look at the time beforehand. Okay, 9 a.m. Now you meditate. And then when you're done, you look at the time again. Okay, 9:15. You know you meditated for 15 minutes. And now if you're trying to get to 30 minutes, you just gradually expand that over time. You just work to expand it more and more. So about once a week, kind of check in on your meditation. Because sometimes 5 minutes of meditation can feel like an hour. And sometimes an hour of meditation can feel like 5 minutes, right? So if you're checking in just once a week, you'll kind of know where you're at and you just gradually build it up from there. But keep in mind, you're not in a race with anybody. You're not in a competition with anybody. If you have a life partner who meditates, you're in your own journey. You know, whatever that person's doing, that's what they're doing. You're doing your own thing, right? And you're building up your own practice. Okay, so that's the time, frequency, and schedule. If you're noticing sleepiness during meditation, you have two options here. I already gave you one of them, which is to just switch positions, right? If you're in the seated or lying position, switch to a standing or walking position. But there's been some people who come here and they're like, David, what do I do if I fall asleep in the walking position, right? I'm noticing I'm drowsy and falling asleep. Well, the thing that you can do, even if you're just noticing in the seated position or lying position that you're falling asleep, you could switch positions. That's one option. But the other option is just get some sleep. Your mind needs sleep, right? You don't need to stretch this out. Just get some rest. Take a nap, 30 minutes, an hour, whatever it is. And then when you wake up, then do your meditation, right? And there's no need to push yourself or force yourself to meditate, because what you're going to notice is when you first start meditating, your mind might have this 6 months or 1 year little hump that you have to get over. Your mind's kind of like a dry sponge. Even if you've been sleeping 8 hours a day up to this point, you might not be getting very good quality of sleep. And now when you start meditating and you're doing this work with the mind, you're exercising the mind, you might notice that it has more of a tendency to sleep. It's kind of like if you weren't working out in the gym and you started working out in the gym, you're going to be tired for a few weeks or a few months as your body and your mind adjust to this. It's the same thing when you start working with the mind, you start exercising the mind, it's going to get sleepy. And you're going to have about a 6 month or 1 year hump that you kind of need to get over. And then when you get on the other side of that, you'll feel better. You might even notice during your regular waking hours during your day that you tend to be a little bit more sleepy than normal when you start to meditate. And this is normal. Just understand that you can just get some rest or get a better sleep in the evening. Slowly but surely, you'll see the mind will improve and you'll get better and better quality sleep. Then you might notice physical sensations during your meditation. What I mean by this is like itching, right? If you notice pain in the body, just change your position. But if you're noticing like itching, what I suggest you do is to ignore it. Understand that it's impermanent, that it's going to arise, it's going to change, and it's going to fade away. Right? But sometimes you're in meditation and that itch, boy, you just want to scratch it, right? Maybe 5 seconds in, you're just like, oh, I just got to scratch this itch. Okay, go ahead and scratch it, right? But now next time, try to make it a little bit longer. Make it 8 seconds or 10 seconds. And then the next time, make it a little bit longer, a little bit longer. Eventually, you can get to the point where you'll just be able to focus on the breath. You'll know that that itch is there, but your mind is undeterred. You can stay focused on your breath. This is what you would like to be able to do. And that can take you a little while to build up to that. But if you itch that scratch, there's going to be another one and another one and another one and another one, right? So if you can try to go the whole life cycle of that itch without scratching it, that's going to help your mind to understand this body is not going to be permanently comfortable. That's normal, right? It's not going to be permanently comfortable. Even when you get to enlightenment, you're going to experience a small degree of physical pain from time to time. This is normal, okay? Then sometimes you might notice visual stimulation during your meditation. What I mean by this is you might see colors or flashing light or certain images in your mind, because sight is actually happening inside the brain. The eye is just bringing in the light. Right? So sometimes when people experience this, they think there's something special going on. They might contact me and they say, David, I saw the color green during my meditation. Does that mean I'm going to get rich? I'm like, no, that's not what that means. Or they'll say, David, I saw the color purple. Does that mean my boyfriend or girlfriend's going to come back to me? What does that mean? Right? It doesn't mean anything in terms of that stuff. I'll explain to you guys what this means so that you know that you're not a special person and this is just normal that people experience these kinds of things. Because you're training the mind, which is non-physical, non-tangible, and then there's this brain, which is the physical organ. These are two different things. There's a connection between the two. And when you're training the mind, there's an effect to the brain. The physical structures of the brain are changing. Doctors and researchers and scientists are showing us this because nowadays we have MRIs and CAT scans and other devices to be able to measure this. Where during the lifetime of the Buddha, they didn't have that, right? So as the physical structures of the brain are changing, your sight is happening inside the brain. The eye is just bringing in light. That's why if you close your eyes, you can actually still see. Right? There's still certain images that are going on in the brain because you have the eyes closed, right? So as the physical structures of the brain are changing, the sight is still there. So now you can see the colors of green and purple. You might even hear this in your brain, in your skull. I used to walk around with a lot of pressure in my skull. I used to have migraine headaches 3 to 5 times a week. I would get crushing headaches that were debilitating, sometimes to the point of vomiting or staying in bed all day. But as I was training my mind with meditation, that pressure all released and I don't get migraine headaches any longer. So I could actually hear it a couple times. It was like, I could hear it inside the brain physically changing. So you might notice this from time to time, and it's completely normal. And you just keep meditating, keep doing the things that you're doing that's leading to those positive changes. But eventually you'll get to the point where those colors and that images and all that stuff isn't there. So it's important to not cling to any of that stuff because it can feel pleasurable. It's like, wow, look at all those pretty colors. Wow, you get all these pleasant feelings. But if you do, when those things don't occur anymore because they're impermanent, you'll be frustrated or angry or bored or lonely or something like this. Okay, so visual stimulation is normal. Sometimes people have been taught to meditate with external stimulus. What I mean by this is like music or candles or beads or phone apps or things like this. If you've been meditating with those kinds of things, that's what's led you to where you are today. But now it's time for you to let that stuff go. Because if you keep holding on to those things, you're not going to be able to cultivate the qualities that you need in order to be able to get to enlightenment. So you're not going to have these things with you permanently. You're not going to have those beads or that phone app or any of this stuff. None of that is permanent. So if you base your meditation practice on impermanent things, that means when you don't have those things, you're going to feel like you can't meditate. So now when you're at a beautiful park and the weather's great, it's sunny, the sun is glistening off the lake and the birds are chirping and the wind has a soft, cool wind blowing through the park. You're like, oh, I'd like to meditate, but I can't because I don't have my beads with me. Oh, if I just had my beads. That's not the position you'd like to be in, right? Or if you're out in the forest, maybe you're on a 3-day trekking tour in Chiang Mai, you're out in the mountains, like 3 days from society, and you're in the middle of the jungle, and you're like, oh, I'd really like to meditate, but I don't have my candle with me. I wish I had my candle, right? You're not going to be able to meditate. So you'd like to be able to meditate with just 3 things. These are the only 3 things that you will ever need to meditate. And you're going to have all 3 of these things with you for the rest of this life. The body, the mind, and the breath. Those are the only 3 things that you need. The body, the mind, and the breath. And if you have those 3 things, you can meditate. So if you're currently meditating with any of these other things, you can strip those things out. Right? You can slowly ease those things out. So if you've been taught to meditate with music or any of these other things, your mind's going to hold on to it. It's going to cling and it's going to crave permanence. And when you start making changes, your mind doesn't like that. So one of the best ways to create change in your life, whether it's to get rid of something that's unwholesome or to bring in something that is wholesome, is to do it slowly and gradually. And your mind will be more appreciative of this. So for example, if you were meditating with music, you could meditate 1 session with it, 1 session without it, right? One session with it, one session without it. And this is going to gradually train your mind to let it go. But now you maybe do one session with it, 2 or 3 without it. One session with it, 2 or 3 without it. You do that for like a week or 2. And then you do one session with it, 3, 4, 5, 6 without it. One session with it, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 without it. You gradually move away from this over the course of multiple weeks, right? So you can do this if you're working to get rid of something unwholesome, but you can also do this if you're looking to bring something wholesome into your life as well. Just do it gradually, because it's going to be a more sustainable, consistent choice that you're going to make. Whereas if you try to snap your fingers and instantly meditate for 3 times a day for 30 minutes, not going to happen, right? So you just gradually bring it in and gradually work towards that goal. So you only need the body, the mind, and the breath. And all these other things, you can slowly strip them away. So that way, when you're in that beautiful park, you can sit down and meditate because you got everything with you. Okay. So any questions on any of this stuff? Mm-hmm.
Thank you. I was at a Buddhist teaching center about a year ago, and the monk was like, "Oh, meditation, it doesn't necessarily require that your brain is just like empty. That's like an interpretation. Like it can be just deep contemplation." And I was like, "Oh, but I didn't know that. Is that, do you agree?"
This isn't true.
Okay.
So what the Buddha taught is that whenever you learn from someone, including a monk, if it's in conflict with his teachings, he suggested to you to ignore that teaching and consider that this person has misunderstood the teachings. So you can see in the words of the Buddha where he taught meditation and he's explaining exactly how to do it. So that way you can see what did the Buddha teach. And where you see somebody that's teaching something opposite of that or different than that, then you can consider this person is misunderstood and you can ignore that teaching, because not every ordained practitioner, not every person studies the original words of the Buddha. So there's a lot of misunderstandings out there. Some people think you can meditate all day long. It's not possible. You can practice mindfulness all day long, and you should practice mindfulness all day long, but you can't meditate all day long. If you're meditating the way the Buddha taught, it's impossible to meditate all day long because your mind would be so overworked. So even some of these retreats where they're meditating like 8, 10, 12 hours a day, they're not meditating the way the Buddha taught, because your mind would implode on itself. You would be utterly exhausted. What they're doing is they're sitting there looking at different things, evaluating different things, thinking about different things, but they're not doing what the Buddha taught, which is what I'm about to show you.
So does that mean that you don't believe Vipassana retreats to be useful?
I don't believe anything. There's a time and a place for a retreat. Even the Buddha recommended people not to go on retreat when they first start learning. He encouraged people to learn among the community first, because there's nothing special that's going to happen by going away to a retreat. A retreat is essentially like, if you think about life is like wide open, right? And if you think about a retreat, the way that other people teach it, a silent retreat, everything's closed down, right? The Buddha taught the middle way. You need to build this life where you're consistently meditating over a long-term period. And if you were just silent all the time in a retreat, you're not learning how to practice something like right speech, right? You need to learn how to practice right speech, because when everyone's on their best behavior in a retreat, you can be pretty peaceful, right? But when you go out in the wide open world, it's like, oh my gosh, what's going on? So you need to build the sustainable practice. Where a retreat comes in is like after you've been learning for several years and you've been training your mind for several years and you're quite peaceful and quite joyful, and you'd like to be able to test your mind and challenge your mind to see, is there anything that you don't see, right? Like you go to a retreat for 5 days or 10 days, maybe there's a special pillow that you have at home that you didn't even realize you were attached to, because it's just always there. But when you're in the retreat, your mind's longing, yearning for it. Or maybe when you're in the retreat, there's some special drink in the morning that you have each morning that you didn't even know your mind was longing, yearning for it, because now you're away from that. that's where the retreat comes in. It helps you to see the dust in the corners, but the real work that you benefit from a retreat is when you come outside of the retreat, because the retreat is just to help you see what's going on in your mind. And now the real work happens when you come out of the retreat, because now you know to set that pillow aside, and you know to not drink that drink for a few months, train your mind to let it go. And then when your mind lets it go, then you can bring the pillow back in, you can bring the drink back in, because your mind has let it go. So the retreat by itself isn't going to produce anything magical or mystical for you. It's just an environment to go into that allows you to strip things away so you can see your mind more clearly. And the Buddha gave a great analogy on this. There was a student who came to him that was a pretty new student, and this person was really excited to go out in the forest by themselves. And they came to the Buddha and they were like so hyped up. They're like, oh, I want to go out into the forest with everybody else. I want to be on my own by myself in seclusion. And the Buddha's like, oh, just stay here among the community. You'll do much better learning amongst the community. And the student was like, no, I want to go out to the forest by myself. And the Buddha said, okay, imagine there's this big bull elephant that walks down into the river, and this river has a fast flowing current, and the elephant is playing and frolicking in the water, bathing itself in this nice cool water, and there's like a rabbit that's watching the big bull elephant. And then after the elephant is done frolicking and playing in the water, it comes out of the water very sure-footedly up the bank to stable ground. And the rabbit's like, oh, I want to do that too, right? It looks so good. And then the rabbit goes into the water and gets washed away, right? So that's what people are doing, is they're seeing other people go to retreat, which they may not even be prepared. Those other people that are going to the retreat, they may not even be prepared for the retreat because they haven't really learned the teachings that they need in order to make the best use of that time in the retreat. Because you need your mindfulness, you need the meditation, you need all these other teachings so that while you're in the retreat, you can observe your mind and you can notice, what am I craving here? But if you have so many cravings that you haven't even started working on them yet, going off to a retreat isn't going to really help you, because you have so many of them that you could be able to work those away first before you kind of look to see, is there any dust in the corners that I'm not looking at and I'm not seeing? So that's the best way to use a retreat.
Got it. So it shouldn't be treated as like a meditation boot camp.
What's that?
So it shouldn't be treated as like meditation boot camp.
In my opinion, I wouldn't treat it that way. I would come to a place like this where you can be around loving and kind people and spend time, and you can smile like you're smiling. You know, they put prisoners in solitary confinement as a punishment for a reason, because it's very painful, right? So if you put yourself in that situation very early on, your mind can kind of implode on itself, and it can even dissuade you from even going on the path, because you might think that's what the path to enlightenment is, where in reality, that's not the path. Because if you're going to get to enlightenment from this household life, you're going to need to create a long-term sustainable practice for yourself, where 5 or 10 days in a retreat, that's not your practice. That's just something you're doing to kind of see, what am I missing in this normal part of my life? What am I not seeing that I need to be able to see? So you'd like to build a long-term sustainable practice for yourself where each day you can be meditating, because your enlightenment isn't going to be determined based on whether you meditate today or not. Your enlightenment is going to be determined based on, if I miss meditation today, what am I going to do next? Is that going to be 1 week, 1 year? How long is it? Or do I notice like, I miss meditation. Let me get right back into that, right? So you're not really interested in forcing the mind or coercing the mind into meditation. You'd like to just gradually ramp it up, because then it's going to be more sustainable for you throughout the long run. Because if you can put together 3 years, 5 years, 10 years of meditation, you'll make your way to enlightenment. There's no reason why you wouldn't, right? But if you just kind of do these crash courses, and then when you come out of the crash course, you don't really know what to do. That's one of the big things people say when they come out of the retreats, that everything falls apart for them because they haven't built up their sustainable practice. Everything's great when they're in their retreat, but then when they come back and they look at their emails and their text messages, and their wife or husband is like, why did you leave? You've been gone for 10 days. The kids have been so bad. Like, gosh, I didn't have you here. Oh, they don't know how to deal with that because they weren't practicing right intention, right speech, right action, and all these other teachings. Sometimes people put a lot of emphasis on meditation, but as you saw from the Eightfold Path, that's just one part of one step. If you do the math, with the 8 factors, that means each factor is about 12.5% of the path to enlightenment. And now with each factor, there's many aspects behind that. So in the right concentration, there's 2 aspects to it, meditation and right concentration. So that means out of the 12.5%, meditation is about 6.25% of your journey to enlightenment. And then there's all these other things that you need to learn and practice. But some people think the Buddha sat under a tree, he meditated and instantly got to enlightenment. So they put all this emphasis on meditation. They really want to meditate for these really long periods of time. But you'll never get to enlightenment that way, because you need to practice right speech and right action, right livelihood. You need to put all these things together for yourself. So yeah, in my opinion, people are not understanding this, but that's okay. That's up to them. But when someone's interested, I'll share it with them so that then you can benefit from that. But if you spend time around the community and understand you're not a bull elephant yet, right? You're maybe just a rabbit, right? And then now you can become a bull elephant at some point. And now you have more knowledge, more wisdom, more stability of mind. Then you go into the retreat. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't know what I am. I may be a hippopotamus or a frog or a toad. All right. So now let's look at what the Buddha taught for meditation, because there's many different meditations that you'll see in the world. Like now, 2,500 years after the death of the Buddha, you'll see hundreds and thousands of different meditations. And some of those meditations are actually taking your mind in the opposite direction of enlightenment. There's only 4 meditations that you would ever need to be able to get to enlightenment. And 2 of them are primary meditations. And the other 2 are kind of like specialized meditations that you would just use in kind of like a case-by-case basis. So this is the words of the Buddha, where he's introducing the 4 types of meditations that he taught. So before this, he was talking to his ordained practitioners about something else, about how to structure their life in order to be able to help them to get to enlightenment. And then this, he says, having based himself on these 5 things, meaning the 5 things he was talking about previously, which you can find in the book series, by the way, the monk should develop further another 4 things. Okay, so he says the perception of unattractiveness of the body should be developed to abandon lust. This is a meditation that if you're having sexual craving and you're having difficulties with that, you can do a meditation to knock that down. It'll help you to not have that longing, yearning for sexual contact. Because sometimes people might have 5, 6, 10 different boyfriends or girlfriends having sex with lots of different people, and they realize that's unwise and they like to knock it down, right? So you can use it for that. Or say you're trying to get rid of sexual contact 100%. You could use it for that as well. So that's a specialized meditation that not everybody needs, but some people need it, so it's there for you. Then he says, loving kindness should be developed to abandon ill will. This is going to help you eliminate anger, hatred, ill will, and all the lesser versions, frustration, agitation, annoyance, even the slightest dislike towards another being. If you have dislike towards others, it's coming from your own mind. There's certain wants and expectations that you have, certain craving for permanence. And if you get what you want, you like those people, but if you don't, you dislike them. So the loving kindness meditation, along with everything else, is going to help you eliminate all of that. So you can get to the point where you have love and kindness towards all beings. So here you can see the Buddha teaching very clearly. This is how a Buddha speaks, very clearly, making it very clear for you, right? Then he says, mindfulness of breathing, or breathing mindfulness meditation, should be developed to cut off thoughts. So this is what we're doing. We're focused on the breath. When the mind moves off the breath, you cut that off. You're not suppressing it. You're learning to cut it off. You're building this internal mechanism within your mind to know how to cut off and let go. Right? So this is the primary form of training you'll see in his other teachings, where he prioritizes this meditation above all other meditations. Doesn't mean you shouldn't do these others, because you need those others, but this is the primary form of meditation. Then he says the perception of impermanence should be developed to eradicate the conceit I am. When one perceives impermanence, the perception of non-self is stabilized. One who perceives non-self eradicates the conceit I am, which is nibbana, or enlightenment, in this very life. So this is a meditation to help you realize non-self. So far you've just been introduced to the universal truth of non-self. And I talked about personal existence view with the universal truths. But later, when you study more deeply, there's classes where I spend like an hour and a half just talking about personal existence view and helping you understand it. And I teach you this meditation because it's going to help you to strip away this clinging to the body and the clinging to the mind, wanting there to be permanence. So these are the only 4 that the Buddha ever taught. These 2 are the primary forms. And then number 1 and number 4, you would only use these in a case-by-case certain situational basis. Okay, so you're going to understand more why these are the 2 primary ones tomorrow when I teach you tomorrow. Okay, so here what I've done is I've taken each one of the meditations and I'm showing you the unwholesome qualities that you're eliminating and the wholesome qualities that you're cultivating, because that's what I shared with you, that meditation is the elimination of unwholesome qualities and the cultivation of wholesome qualities, right? So here with breathing mindfulness meditation, with breathing mindfulness meditation, you're eliminating the unwholesome quality of craving, desire, attachment, and you're cultivating the wholesome qualities of mindfulness or awareness of mind and concentration. Now, these others also have certain wholesome and unwholesome qualities, but we're not going to focus on that today because this is a foundational course. So we're just going to stick with the first one, and I'm going to teach you about this, okay? So here's some more words of the Buddha on meditation. He says, a pot without a stand is easy to tip over. A pot without a stand is easy to tip over. The pot is your mind. The stand is your meditation practice. A mind without a meditation practice is easy to become discontent. That's what he's saying to you. Right? So right now, depending on what you've been doing with meditation, your pot might be on a little dowel rod and it's teeter-tottering. And the slightest little thing that happens, you become discontent. But as you meditate more and more, your stand becomes wider and wider and wider. And now it's harder and harder to tip over the pot, right? It's harder and harder to become discontent when you have a really stable, steady meditation practice. So that's what he's sharing here. Here he talks about the goal of breathing mindfulness meditation. Monks, there is one thing that when developed and cultivated leads exclusively to liberation, to freedom from strong feelings, to elimination, to peace, to direct knowledge, experience, to enlightenment, to nibbana. What is that one thing? Mindfulness of breathing, breathing mindfulness meditation. This is that one thing that when developed and cultivated leads exclusively to liberation, to freedom from strong feelings, to elimination, to peace, to direct knowledge or experience, to enlightenment, to nibbana. So he's not saying you only need one thing to get to enlightenment, because otherwise he would have just taught meditation and that's it, right? But we've got 45 books that are this thick, and that's just what we have left of his teachings. He actually taught more than just that, right? What he's saying is that this meditation of breathing mindfulness, it has one goal, it has one objective, and that's to help you get to enlightenment, to peace, to joy, to the enlightened mental state. That's the only goal. So it's kind of like your car. It has one objective, is transportation, right? This car provides you transportation, but you need more than just a car to live your life. You need food, clothing, shelter, medical care. You need other things besides transportation. So it's the same thing here, is that this meditation, it leads to one thing, which is enlightenment, to peace and joy, this enlightened mental state, but you need other things besides the meditation. But he's showing you what the goal of this meditation is to get you to enlightenment. Okay? So now, just to talk about how to do this meditation. And you guys have done it 3 times now, so you're familiar with this. You're focused on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin. This is your post and your pillar. This is the stable thing that you're focusing your mind on. And then whenever your mind moves off of that, you cut it off and you bring it back. Okay? That's what you're doing with the meditation. Your goal of this meditation isn't to eliminate your thoughts. You're going to have thoughts. Even when you're enlightened, you're going to have thoughts in your meditation. But the difference is in the unenlightened state, you'll have a bombardment of thoughts, lots and lots and lots of thoughts, or you'll indulge in a thought. You'll follow it for a period of time. You'll look at it. You'll play with it. And then you're like, oh yeah, that's right, I'm meditating. Let me bring my mind back to the breath, right? So in the enlightened mental state, you'll have a thought, you'll notice it, you'll cut it off and let it go and come right back to the breath. And then you'll have this quietness and stillness in the mind, right? And then you'll have another thought. And you'll notice it, cut it off, and bring your mind right back, right? So you're exercising your mind in one way. In the meditation, you're cutting off anything and everything that comes up because you're exercising the mind. But then in your day-to-day life, you're only cutting off the unwholesome thoughts. If you have the thought of calling up your mom and taking her out to lunch, you don't need to cut that off. That's a wholesome thing, right? You're going to take mom out to lunch, practice some generosity. But if you're thinking about punching your boss in the face or something like this, you'd like to cut that off, right? It's going to produce unwholesome results for you, right? So in your day-to-day life, you're only cutting off the unwholesome thoughts. But in the meditation, you're building this mechanism in your mind to be able to cut off and let go. It's just like a professional athlete. If I was a pole vaulter, my sport looks a certain way. But when I go into the gym, my activity in the gym looks completely different. There's weight training, cardiovascular training, agility training, all this kind of stuff. So your training looks one way and your actual sport looks a completely different way, right? So you're cutting off anything and everything that comes up in meditation, but then in your day-to-day life, you're only cutting off unwholesome thoughts. So if you think about the breath as this post or pillar, and you think about animals, like wild animals, being tied to that post or pillar. Maybe the alligators pulling towards the river, and maybe the birds pulling towards the sky, and the monkeys pulling towards the jungle. When they get to the end of that rope, they get yanked back to the post or pillar, right? And then they pull again, and they get yanked back, and they pull again, and they get yanked back. Eventually, if they keep pulling and pulling, and they keep getting yanked back, they're going to be like, all right, I'm tied up to this post. I'm not going anywhere. I'm just going to sit down and be calm right here by this post and pillar. Your mind's the same way. It's going to pull and pull and pull. For many years, it's going to pull, right? But each time it does, you yank it back. In meditation and in your day-to-day life too, right? You're in the mall. You see that pair of shoes. Oh man, I really want to get those shoes. Hold on a second. I got 30 pairs. I don't, but I have 30 pairs of shoes at home. What do I need one more pair of shoes for? What's that going to do for me? Right? I don't need that shoes. You pull your mind back, right? So at one time I did have probably 30 pairs of shoes. I don't anymore, but at one time I did, right? So if you notice your mind longing and yearning, you'd like to pull it back and pull it back and pull it back. And eventually it's just going to be calm and it's not going to have craving, desire, attachment anymore. But it's going to take multiple years for you to gradually train that in meditation and outside of meditation too. But the difference here is this is a permanent solution, right? When you're standing at the bottom of the mountain and you're looking up at the top of the mountain, it looks pretty tall. And it's like, wow, how am I ever going to climb this mountain? But if you look at the top of the mountain, you'll dissuade yourself from ever trying, right? But if you look down at your feet and you're like, let me just put one foot in front of the other. Let me just focus on one step at a time. Next thing you know, you're halfway up the mountain, right? And now you're like, I'm feeling a little bit tired. What do? You sit down on a log and take a break, right? Now you take a break, you catch your breath, and you're like, okay, let me keep on walking. So now you walk up to the top of the mountain, and eventually you get this beautiful view. You get all this fresh air, right? It's wonderful being up there at the top of the mountain. But the thing about the mountain is you need to walk back down, right? But the thing about getting to enlightenment is you don't walk back down. Once you get to the top and your mind's enlightened, it's a permanent mental state. You never need to come down from the beautiful view or the fresh air, right? So this meditation is an important part of that. Your goal here isn't to eliminate your thoughts. Your goal is to notice them sooner and sooner and cut them off and let them go easier and easier. And that's what you're working towards, gradually building up to that. So any questions on breathing mindfulness meditation? No questions? Okay. I don't see any questions anywhere. Okay. So I'm going to end with just one thing, and then I'll invite you guys to do a meditation session if you like. This is the words of the Buddha. He says, meditate, monks. Do not be complacent, lest you regret it later. This is my instruction to you. Okay? So here he's saying, Don't be complacent. Don't be lazy, right? This is the only thing you're ever going to get from the Buddha where he's like, okay, come on, like meditate, right? He's not pushing you. He's not trying to force you or convince you. He's just kind of letting you know, like, hey, you're going to regret having not meditated if you don't meditate. So when you're angry, when you're frustrated, when you're lonely and bored, when you're feeling guilty and shameful, you're going to regret having not meditated. He's just letting you know that, right? So what I would share with this is I would say never give up. Don't ever give up on your meditation practice, because if you give up, it's like saying, I'm just going to be angry for the rest of my life. Oh, well. Or I'm just going to be stressed and have anxiety the rest of my life. Oh, well. Right? Like you're not interested in resigning yourself to that or relegating yourself to that for the rest of your life. So maybe you go some point, maybe you kind of slip up and there's a couple of days where you don't meditate. Okay, that's where you are, right? You're building up this practice. But like I mentioned, your enlightenment isn't going to be determined on whether you miss meditation today or not. That's not what's going to determine whether you get to enlightenment. What's going to determine whether you get to enlightenment is now that you've missed meditation, what do you do next? Does that become 1 week, 1 month, 1 year? Or you're like, I missed meditation. I'm going to get back into that, right? There was a period of time where I went 3 years without meditating because I didn't understand the teachings of the Buddha very well, right? That was the worst 3 years of my life. I could say pretty confidently, that was the worst 3 years of my life, right? But then eventually I got back into it, right? And now you just gradually build up your practice. Don't ever give up. You can unsubscribe from anger, sadness, frustration, stress, anxiety, all these other feelings. It's just like an email list. You can unsubscribe, right? You can do the same thing with these feelings. So you need to get to the point where you understand not to ever give up on your meditation practice. Okay? All right. So if you guys would like to meditate, I'll guide you in a meditation session. You guys like to meditate? Okay. So right now it's 2:45. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the chanting to ease us into the meditation, but I'm not going to do any guidance. I'm just going to let you guys meditate on your own. Okay. So remember, you're focused on the breath, and anytime the mind moves off, cut that off and let it go and come back to the breath. I'm not permanent in your life. I'm impermanent. So you're not going to get guidance from me all the time. So you're going to need to learn how to meditate on your own. So this will be a good chance for you to do that. So if you'd like to chant, you're more than welcome to. And then afterwards, just do your meditation. And then when we're done, I'll come out of the meditation with some more chanting. Okay? Samma sammuto mahakava Bhutang mahakavanhang apivateyami Savakato mahakavata tammo Dhammang namasami Supatipano mahakavato Savaka Sankho Sanghang namami Namo rasa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa Namo rasa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa Namo rasa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa Iti piso mahakava arahang samma sambuddho Vicacaranang sammuno สกาโตโรกาวิตูอนุเตโรปุริสาดามาสติสตาตาวามนุสรังพุทโธภาควาติ อะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธมะกะวาพุทธังมหากวันหังอภิวาเทมิสวากขาโตมหากวตาธัมโมธัมมังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนมหากวโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมอะระหะสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมอะระหะสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมอะระหะสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมหากวาอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิจาจารณังสัมมุโนสกขาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาดามาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสนังพุทโธภะคะวะติ All right, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. Any questions on meditation? Anything you guys would like to ask? Any questions from anyone? Okay. So I'll just end things by saying, never give up, right? Never give up. So tomorrow I'm going to be starting with meditation, right? Just like we do each morning. And then I'm going to do a talk on the 3 poisons. This is going to give you a high level understanding of what's really going on in the mind, because today we talked about the 4 Noble Truths, which kind of gives you a window into the unenlightened mind, helping you see that it's craving, desire, attachment, that longing, yearning that's causing those discontent feelings. But now you're going to see kind of a wider perspective of what's really going on. And I'm going to deepen it for you and helping you to understand it. So we're going to do that in the morning. And then after our mid-morning break, I'm going to teach you the 5 precepts. These are 5 impactful decisions that plug into the Eightfold Path. That's really going to help you more fully understand what the Buddha is teaching there, more helping you to understand the natural law of karma. If you've heard that the Buddha taught no killing, no stealing, no sexual misconduct, no lying, no intoxicants, the Buddha actually didn't teach this. That's not his words. That sounds like black and white. It sounds like rules and commandments. He actually taught more illuminating language than that. So I'm going to share that with you tomorrow, and then I'm going to help you see how to relate it to your day-to-day decision making in certain decisions that you come up with in your day-to-day life. Then after our lunch break, I'm going to be teaching walking meditation. So that's going to help you to have kind of more invigoration in the mind. If you're noticing you're falling asleep, or if you're noticing that you have aches and pains in the body, or you're noticing that you're having overactivity in your mind, you're having like a lot of hyper energy, and the last thing you're thinking about is being still, the walking meditation is going to help you with that. Okay, so enjoy the rest of your day. Whatever you do, have a lovely, wonderful rest of your day. We'll see you next time. Sawadee krap. Jai Jian.